The morning sun cast long shadows across the calm waters of the Arabian Gulf as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison adjusted his tactical goggles one final time. The SEAL Team 6 unit had been deployed for what intelligence reports called a routine reconnaissance mission along the Iranian coastline. Nothing about their current situation felt routine. Morrison had been leading special operations for over a decade, but something about this mission gnawed at his instincts. The water was too quiet, the enemy positions too predictable, and the intelligence too clean. In his experience, when everything seemed perfect, it usually meant they were walking into a trap. Eagle 1 to base. We are approaching the target coordinates. Morrison whispered into his throat microphone as his team of 8 elite Navy SEALs moved silently through the water. Each man was a highly trained killing machine, capable of operating in any environment. But today they found themselves in unfamiliar territory. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Rodriguez, Morrison's second-in-command, surfaced quietly beside him. Rodriguez had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq before joining the SEALs. His dark eyes constantly scanned the horizon, searching for threats that might not be immediately visible. "Sir, something doesn't feel right about this," Rodriguez murmured, his voice barely audible above the gentle lapping of waves against their rebreathers. "The satellite imagery showed enemy patrol boats in this area, but we haven't seen anything for the past 2 hours." Morrison nodded grimly. He had been thinking the same thing. The mission briefing had indicated they would encounter Iranian naval patrols, shore installations, and possibly even submarine activity. Instead, they found themselves swimming through waters that seemed completely abandoned. The team consisted of some of the most experienced operators in the Navy. Besides Morrison and Rodriguez, there was Chief Petty Officer William "Tank" Patterson, a demolitions expert who could disarm a bomb blindfolded and create explosives from household items. Petty Officer Second Class David Kim served as their communications specialist and could hack into enemy systems faster than most people could type their passwords. Petty Officer First Class Anthony "Spider" Castellanos was their designated marksman, capable of making impossible shots with any weapon placed in his hands. Petty Officer Second Class James Thompson handled underwater operations and could hold his breath longer than seemed humanly possible. Petty Officer Third Class Ryan O'Brien was their medic, trained to perform emergency surgery in combat conditions. Finally, Petty Officer Third Class Miguel Santos served as their intelligence analyst and spoke 4 languages fluently. Each man had volunteered for this mission knowing the risks involved. Iran had been increasingly aggressive in the region, threatening shipping lanes and conducting military exercises that bordered on provocative. The United States needed current intelligence on Iranian naval capabilities, and SEAL Team 6 had been tasked with gathering that information. Base to Eagle 1, maintain current heading, and proceed to Checkpoint Alpha, came the voice of Commander Sarah Mitchell through their encrypted communications system. Mitchell was coordinating the mission from a command center aboard the USS Nimitz, stationed 50 nautical miles away in international waters. Morrison acknowledged the transmission and signaled his team to continue moving. They had been swimming for nearly 4 hours, using advanced rebreathers that left no bubble trail and specialized suits that regulated their body temperature in the warm Gulf waters. As they approached the Iranian coastline, Morrison could make out the silhouettes of military installations through his night vision equipment. The briefing had identified these facilities as communication centers and radar stations, crucial to Iran's ability to monitor naval traffic in the region. "Contact, 2 o'clock, whispered Kim, pointing toward a small patrol boat that had suddenly appeared from behind a rocky outcropping. The vessel was moving slowly, its crew apparently conducting a routine patrol of the coastline. Morrison raised his fist, signaling the team to stop and maintain position. They floated motionless in the water, their specialized equipment making them nearly invisible to conventional detection methods. The patrol boat passed within 50 meters of their position without showing any signs of awareness. Once the vessel had moved on, Morrison gave the signal to continue. They were now less than half a mile from their primary objective, a heavily fortified naval base that intelligence reports suggested housed Iran's newest class of fast attack boats. Rodriguez checked his waterproof tablet, which displayed real-time satellite imagery of their target area. "Sir, The thermal signatures show at least 12 vessels in the harbor, but they're not showing any movement. Either they're all cold or they're not there at all. Morrison finished the thought. The possibility of a decoy operation had been discussed during their mission briefing, but everyone had hoped the intelligence was accurate. Tank Patterson swam closer to the two leaders. As the team's demolitions expert, he had been studying the harbor defenses throughout their approach. Those gun emplacements look real enough, but the patrol patterns are too predictable. If I were defending this place, I'd have randomized schedules and multiple backup positions. Morrison was beginning to suspect they were dealing with something more complex than a simple reconnaissance mission. The Iranian military was known for its tactical sophistication, and the apparent lack of security measures suggested either incompetence or deliberate misdirection. "Spider, what do you see through that scope?" Morrison asked Castellanos, who had been observing the shoreline through a specialized underwater periscope. "Multiple heat signatures in the buildings, but the movement patterns are weird," Spider reported. "Some of the guards seem to be staying in position too long, and others are moving in patterns that don't make tactical sense." As they continued their approach, Kim suddenly raised his hand in alarm. "Sir, I'm picking up multiple sonar pings. There's something big moving under the water, maybe a submarine or—" Before he could finish his sentence, the water around them suddenly erupted in a hail of gunfire. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness from multiple positions along the shoreline, and the SEALs found themselves caught in a carefully orchestrated ambush. "Who's firing? Where's the shooter?" Morrison shouted over the chaos as his team scattered and sought cover behind underwater rock formations. The carefully planned reconnaissance mission had suddenly become a fight for survival. Rodriguez dove deeper, using his combat training to assess the situation while remaining underwater. The gunfire was coming from at least 6 different positions, suggesting a coordinated attack rather than a chance encounter with patrol units. Patterson immediately began calculating escape routes while Kim worked frantically to establish communication with their support team aboard the Nimitz. The encrypted radio channels were being jammed, making it impossible to call for immediate backup. Spider Castellanos surfaced just long enough to identify muzzle flashes and began returning fire with his specialized underwater assault rifle. His shots were accurate, and Morrison could see at least 2 enemy positions go silent. Thompson and O'Brien worked together to treat a minor shrapnel wound that Santos had sustained during the initial volley. The team's medic quickly applied a waterproof bandage while Thompson prepared underwater charges that could create a diversion. "We need to move now," Morrison decided, realizing that staying in their current position would only give the enemy time to bring in reinforcements. "Tank, can you create a distraction?" "Already on it, sir," Patterson replied, activating a series of small explosive charges he had placed underwater during their approach. The charges detonated in sequence, creating massive water spouts that temporarily obscured the enemy's view. Using the confusion created by the explosions, the SEAL team began a tactical withdrawal toward deeper water. Morrison knew they needed to reach a rendezvous point where they could signal for extraction, but the enemy seemed to anticipate their every move. As they swam through the chaos, Rodriguez noticed something that made his blood run cold. "Sir, those aren't Iranian weapons signatures. The muzzle flashes and the sound patterns are wrong for their standard equipment." Morrison processed this information while continuing to coordinate his team's escape. If Rodriguez was right, it meant they weren't facing Iranian forces at all. Someone else was operating in these waters, and that someone had been waiting specifically for them. The realization hit him like a physical blow. They hadn't stumbled into an ambush. They had been deliberately led into a trap. The mission intelligence had been compromised, and someone wanted SEAL Team 6 either dead or captured. "Base, this is Eagle 1. Morrison tried again to reach the Nimitz, but the jamming was too strong. They were on their own until they could reach a position where their communications equipment could penetrate the electronic interference. Kim suddenly grabbed Morrison's arm and pointed toward the deeper water. "Sir, we've got company. Multiple contacts moving fast beneath us." Through the murky water, Morrison could make out the shapes of what appeared to be enemy divers approaching their position. The trap was closing around them, and they had nowhere to go but up. As the SEAL team prepared to surface and face their attackers, Morrison caught a glimpse of something that didn't make sense. In the distance, barely visible through the water, he saw a figure moving with the fluid grace of a professional swimmer. The person appeared to be alone and was approaching the battle zone from an unexpected direction. "Who the hell is that?" Rodriguez whispered, following Morrison's gaze. Before anyone could answer, the mysterious figure disappeared beneath the surface, leaving only ripples to mark their presence. Morrison had no idea who they had just seen, but something told him their situation was about to become even more complicated. The gunfire from the shore intensified, and Morrison realized they had run out of time for speculation. "Everyone stay together and follow my lead," he ordered. "We're going to punch through their line and make for the extraction point." As SEAL Team 6 prepared to fight their way out of the ambush, none of them could have imagined that their salvation would come from the most unexpected source imaginable. The mysterious figure Morrison had glimpsed was about to change everything. But first, they had to survive the next few minutes of what was shaping up to be the most dangerous mission of their careers. The water around them continued to erupt with gunfire as the elite Navy SEALs found themselves fighting for their lives against an enemy they couldn't identify in waters that should have been familiar territory. The mission had gone wrong in ways none of them had anticipated, and their only hope lay in reaching safety before their unknown attackers could complete whatever plan they had set in motion. Morrison took one last look around at his team, knowing that their survival depended on the training, courage, and brotherhood that had brought them through countless dangerous missions before. Whatever was waiting for them in the dark waters ahead, they would face it together. The water temperature dropped noticeably as SEAL Team 6 moved deeper into the Arabian Gulf, each man fighting against the dual pressures of their tactical situation and the increasing depth. Lieutenant Commander Morrison's mind raced through possible scenarios as his team executed a fighting withdrawal from the ambush site. Rodriguez surfaced briefly to get his bearings, then dove back down with disturbing news. "Sir, I count at least 15 muzzle flashes from the shoreline, and there are boats moving in from both flanks. This isn't a chance encounter. They've been planning this." The sophistication of the ambush troubled Morrison more than he wanted to admit. Iranian forces were capable, but this level of coordination suggested involvement from someone with extensive knowledge of SEAL tactics and procedures. The timing had been perfect, the positioning ideal, and the execution flawless. Tank Patterson swam alongside his commander, constantly monitoring their 6 o'clock position for pursuit. His demolitions expertise had taught him to think like an attacker, and what he saw didn't make sense from a tactical perspective. "Sir, if they wanted us dead, we'd be dead already," Patterson observed quietly. "Those gun positions have overlapping fields of fire, but they're shooting to hurt us, not to kill us. Someone wants us alive." The implication sent a chill through Morrison that had nothing to do with the water temperature. Capture of an entire SEAL team would be an intelligence coup of enormous proportions, potentially compromising years of classified operations and putting countless other servicemen at risk. Kim struggled to maintain communication equipment while swimming, periodically attempting to break through the electronic jamming that surrounded their position. "The interference is too sophisticated for standard Iranian equipment," he reported. "This is military-grade jamming technology, probably Russian or Chinese manufacture." Spider Castellanos had taken point position, using his marksmanship training to identify and neutralize the most immediate threats. Through his specialized scope, he observed enemy movement patterns that reinforced Patterson's assessment. Confirming Tank's observation, Spider whispered, "These guys are professionals, but they're not shooting to kill. Multiple opportunities for lethal shots that they're not taking." Thompson and O'Brien maintained close formation while monitoring Santos, who was showing signs of shock from his earlier wound. The team's medic had stabilized the injury, but they needed to reach safety soon to prevent complications. As they continued their underwater retreat, Morrison became aware of subtle changes in their environment. The water currents seemed different, the ambient noise levels had shifted, and there was an almost imperceptible vibration coming from somewhere below them. "Contact below," Thompson suddenly announced, pointing downward with his tactical light. Something big moving in the deep water, maybe 200 meters down. Morrison felt his heart rate increase as he considered the possibilities. Submarine activity in this area could indicate the presence of Iranian naval assets that hadn't appeared in their mission briefing, or it might suggest something even more troubling. Rodriguez checked his depth gauge and tactical computer. We're at 60 feet and still taking fire from above. If we go deeper, we risk decompression issues, but staying here makes us sitting ducks. The team had been underwater for nearly 6 hours using their advanced rebreather systems, approaching the safe operational limits for their equipment. Morrison knew they needed to surface soon or risk equipment failure that could prove fatal. Kim suddenly grabbed Morrison's arm with unusual urgency. "Sir, I'm picking up radio chatter on emergency frequencies. Multiple languages, including English with American accents." Morrison felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The presence of Americans in the area hadn't been mentioned in any of their briefings, and the implications were deeply troubling. Either there was another U.S. operation they hadn't been told about, or something much worse was happening. "Can you determine the source?" Morrison asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Negative, sir. The signals are being bounced off multiple relay points, but the encryption patterns are definitely U.S. military standard." The realization hit Morrison like a physical blow. If American forces were involved in the ambush, it meant their mission had been compromised at the highest levels. Someone with access to classified information had deliberately fed them false intelligence and led them into a trap. Patterson's voice cut through Morrison's dark thoughts. "Movement on the surface, 3 boats converging on our position. They're not Iranian patrol craft. These are modified civilian vessels with military equipment." Morrison made a quick tactical assessment. They were trapped between surface vessels above and unknown contacts below, with limited ammunition and air supply running low. Standard SEAL procedures called for a fighting withdrawal to a predetermined extraction point, but those procedures assumed they were facing a known enemy with predictable capabilities. "Everyone listen up," Morrison said quietly, gathering his team into a tight formation. "We're dealing with something outside our mission parameters. Our primary objective is now survival and intelligence gathering. We need to identify who's behind this and get that information back to command." Spider Castellanos had been quietly observing the surface vessels through his scope. "Sir, I can make out armed personnel on those boats, but they're not wearing Iranian uniforms. The equipment looks American or European, and their movement patterns suggest professional military training." The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to form a disturbing picture. Morrison realized they were facing a rogue operation that involved American personnel and equipment, possibly coordinated by someone with intimate knowledge of SEAL procedures and capabilities. Santos, despite his injury, had been monitoring intelligence frequencies on his specialized equipment. "Sir, I'm picking up encrypted communications that reference Package 6 and delivery confirmation. They're definitely talking about us." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. The terminology suggested they were dealing with a kidnapping operation rather than a military engagement. Someone wanted SEAL Team 6 captured intact, and they had the resources and inside information necessary to make it happen. Thompson suddenly pointed toward deeper water. "Sir, whatever's down there is coming up fast. Sonar signature suggests a small submarine or large underwater vehicle." The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Morrison knew they had only minutes before their escape routes would be completely cut off. He began calculating their options, none of which seemed particularly promising. "Tank, what kind of explosive options do we have?" Morrison asked his demolitions expert. "Enough to make things interesting," Patterson replied with a grim smile. "I've got shaped charges that could disable those surface vessels, but we need to get close enough to plant them." Morrison was about to respond when Kim suddenly looked up with alarm. "Sir, the jamming just stopped. All frequencies are clear." Before Morrison could process the implications, his communications system crackled to life with an unexpected transmission. The voice was calm, professional, and spoke with a slight accent that Morrison couldn't immediately identify. "Eagle 1, this is Avenger. Maintain your current position and prepare for assistance. Do not, repeat, do not attempt to surface or engage enemy contacts." Morrison exchanged glances with Rodriguez. The call sign Avenger didn't appear in any of their operational files, and the authority in the voice suggested someone with significant military experience. "Avenger, identify yourself and your authority," Morrison responded, though he kept his voice low to avoid detection by hostile forces. Eagle 1. Avenger is a friendly asset operating independently. You are surrounded by hostile forces planning to capture your team for intelligence purposes. Suggest you trust me if you want to see home again. The mysterious voice's knowledge of their situation was unsettling, but Morrison had few alternatives. His team was running out of time, ammunition, and options. Rodriguez had been monitoring the hostile contacts during the radio exchange. Sir, the submarine contact is definitely coming up, and the surface vessels are tightening their formation. We're about to be completely surrounded. Morrison made a command decision that went against his training, but seemed to be their only option. Avenger, this is Eagle 1. What kind of assistance are you offering? Maintain position for 30 seconds, then follow my lead. Be prepared for aggressive maneuvering and do not surface under any circumstances until I give the all-clear. Spider Castellanos, who had been tracking the hostile surface vessels, suddenly reported new contacts. Multiple explosions on the water surface, sir. The boats are taking fire from an unknown source. Through the murky water, Morrison could see flashes of light and hear the distant sounds of combat above them. Someone was engaging the hostile forces, but he couldn't identify the source of the attacks. Kim monitored multiple radio frequencies as the battle raged above them. Sir, the hostiles are reporting sniper fire from an impossible angle. They can't locate the shooter. Thompson, who had been tracking the underwater contact, reported that the submarine's signature was changing course and moving away from their position at high speed. Whatever was down there just ran, he observed. O'Brien checked Santos's condition while the chaos continued around them. He's stable but needs medical attention soon. The salt water is making infection a serious risk. Morrison realized that their mysterious ally had somehow turned the tables on their attackers, but he still had no idea who Avenger was or why someone was helping them. The tactical situation remained dangerous, and they still needed to reach safety. Avenger, this is Eagle 1. What's your plan for extraction? Eagle 1, surface slowly at coordinates I'm transmitting now. Move as a tight group, and be prepared for immediate departure. The enemy will regroup quickly. Kim received the coordinates and confirmed they were about half a mile from their current position. Morrison signaled his team to begin moving, knowing they were placing their lives in the hands of someone they had never met. As SEAL Team 6 began their careful ascent toward the surface, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that they were moving from one dangerous situation into another potentially worse one. The mysterious Avenger had demonstrated impressive capabilities, but that only raised more questions about who they were and what they wanted. The water above them was eerily quiet now, suggesting that whatever had happened to the hostile forces had been swift and decisive. Morrison hoped they were swimming toward rescue rather than capture, but with their ammunition running low and their equipment at operational limits, they had little choice but to trust their unknown benefactor. Rodriguez checked his tactical computer one final time before they reached the surface. Sir, if this goes wrong, we won't have enough air for another extended dive. Morrison nodded grimly. They were committed now, and their fate rested in the hands of someone they knew nothing about. As they approached the coordinates Avenger had provided, Morrison prepared his team for whatever waited above the waves. The surface of the Arabian Gulf appeared deceptively peaceful as SEAL Team 6 cautiously broke through the water at the coordinates provided by their mysterious ally. Lieutenant Commander Morrison was the first to surface, his eyes immediately scanning for threats while his team maintained position just below the surface. The scene that greeted Morrison was unlike anything he had encountered in 15 years of special operations. 3 hostile vessels floated dead in the water, their crews either missing or incapacitated. Smoke drifted from multiple points of impact, and the smell of burned electronics filled the air. Clear to surface, Morrison whispered into his throat microphone, and his 7 team members emerged from the water in perfect tactical formation. Each man immediately assumed a defensive position while scanning for the source of their salvation. Rodriguez was the first to spot her. Contact, 11 o'clock, approximately 50 meters. Morrison turned to see a figure emerging from the water with the fluid grace of someone born to the ocean environment. As she approached, he could make out the details that would be burned into his memory for years to come. She appeared to be in her early 30s, with shoulder-length dark hair that somehow looked perfectly arranged despite having just emerged from salt water. Her tactical gear was unlike anything Morrison had seen before, a combination of advanced diving equipment and precision weaponry that suggested military training of the highest caliber. But what struck Morrison most was her complete calm in a situation that would have tested the nerves of seasoned Special Forces operators. She moved with the confidence of someone who had turned the tide of their desperate situation single-handedly. Eagle 1, I'm Commander Elena Vasquez, U.S. Navy Special Warfare Development Group, she announced as she approached their position. Sorry for the dramatic entrance, but your situation required immediate intervention. Morrison felt his world shift slightly. The Special Warfare Development Group, commonly known as DevGru, was an even more classified unit than SEAL Team 6. Their existence was barely acknowledged, and their operations were so secret that most military personnel had never heard of them. Commander, with respect, we weren't briefed on any DevGru assets in this area, Morrison replied, his training demanding verification even in their current circumstances. Vasquez smiled grimly as she checked her tactical gear. That's because officially, I'm not here. This is a black operation that began 6 months ago when intelligence indicated a planned operation against SEAL Team 6. Rodriguez exchanged glances with Morrison. Ma'am, are you saying our mission was compromised from the beginning? Worse than that, Vasquez replied, pulling a waterproof tablet from her equipment pack. Your mission was created specifically to get you captured. Someone with very high clearance has been feeding classified information to hostile forces for months. The implications hit Morrison like a physical blow. If Vasquez was correct, it meant their entire chain of command had been infiltrated at a level that could compromise national security for decades. Kim, who had been monitoring radio frequencies, looked up from his equipment with concern. Ma'am, I'm picking up encrypted communications indicating that backup forces are en route to this location. Multiple aircraft and naval vessels converging on our position. Vasquez nodded as if she had expected this development. The people behind this operation have extensive resources and won't give up easily. We need to move fast and get to a secure location where I can brief you properly. Tank Patterson examined the disabled hostile vessels with professional interest. Ma'am, what kind of weapon systems did you use to take out those boats? I've never seen damage patterns like that. Experimental sniper systems designed for marine environments, Vasquez replied. I've been testing them for the past 18 months in various operational theaters. Today seemed like an appropriate field trial. Spider Castellanos, whose expertise in marksmanship was legendary among special forces, studied the precision of the attacks on the hostile vessels. Ma'am, the angle of those shots would have required firing from underwater while accounting for refraction and current drift. I've never seen anything like it. Vasquez began moving toward a section of the coastline that appeared uninhabited. The technology is classified, but I can tell you it represents a significant advancement in underwater warfare capabilities. Right now, though, we need to focus on keeping you alive long enough to expose the conspiracy that nearly got you killed. Thompson had been treating Santos while listening to the conversation. Ma'am, our teammate needs medical attention. The shrapnel wound is showing signs of infection. There's a safe house approximately 2 kilometers from here with full medical facilities, Vasquez assured him. We can reach it underwater to avoid detection, but we need to move immediately. O'Brien checked Santos's vital signs while preparing him for another underwater journey. He's stable but needs antibiotics soon. How long to reach this safe house? 30 minutes if we maintain a steady pace, Vasquez replied, then addressed the entire team. Before we move, you need to understand something crucial. The people who set this trap have been planning it for months. They know your tactics, your capabilities, and your standard operating procedures. From this point forward, we operate outside normal protocols. Morrison felt the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders in a new way. His team's survival now depended on trusting someone they had just met and abandoning the training that had kept them alive through countless dangerous missions. Ma'am, what can you tell us about the scope of this conspiracy? How high does it go? Vasquez's expression darkened. High enough to access real-time intelligence on your mission, modify your briefings, and coordinate with hostile forces. We're talking about someone with access to the highest levels of Naval Special Warfare Command. Rodriguez had been quietly monitoring their perimeter while processing this information. That could be dozens of people with the necessary clearance levels. How do we identify the source? I've been working on that for months, Vasquez replied. The operation tonight was designed to force their hand. By saving you, I've disrupted their timeline and made them desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Kim suddenly looked up from his communications equipment with alarm. Ma'am, I'm detecting helicopter rotors approaching from multiple directions. At least 4 aircraft, moving fast and low. Vasquez immediately activated her own communications equipment. Time to go? Everyone check your gear and prepare for extended underwater movement. We'll be traveling through a series of underwater caves that will mask our thermal signatures. Patterson looked skeptical about the underwater cave system. Ma'am, underwater cave diving is extremely dangerous even with specialized training. One mistake, and we could be trapped. The caves have been mapped and prepared specifically for this contingency, Vasquez assured him. Emergency air supplies have been positioned at regular intervals, and there are multiple exit points along the route. Morrison was impressed despite himself. The level of preparation Vasquez described suggested months of planning and significant resource allocation. Someone had been taking the threat to SEAL Team 6 very seriously. Spider Castellanos had been observing the approaching aircraft through his scope. Contact confirmed. For helicopters with full assault teams, these aren't search and rescue birds. They're coming to finish what the boat team started. Santos, despite his injury, had been monitoring intelligence frequencies on his equipment. Sir, the hostile communications are referencing Package 6 compromised and Initiate Recovery Protocol 7. They're definitely planning something big. Vasquez led the team toward what appeared to be a natural depression in the seafloor. The cave entrance is concealed beneath this rock formation. Follow me closely and maintain physical contact with the person in front of you. The tunnels are dark and easily navigable if you stay calm. Thompson checked his diving equipment one final time. Ma'am, our rebreathers have been running for over 7 hours. We're approaching operational limits. The cave system has been equipped with emergency air supplies, Vasquez repeated. Fresh rebreathers are available at the halfway point, approximately 15 minutes into the journey. Morrison made the decision that would either save his team or doom them all. All right, people, we follow Commander Vasquez's lead. Stay alert, stay together, and trust your training. As the team prepared to enter the underwater cave system, Morrison couldn't help but wonder about the remarkable woman who had appeared from nowhere to save them. Vasquez's capabilities seemed almost superhuman, and her knowledge of the conspiracy against them was disturbingly comprehensive. O'Brien helped Santos into the water while ensuring his waterproof bandages would hold during the underwater journey. He's as ready as I can make him under these circumstances. Rodriguez performed a final equipment check while keeping watch for the approaching helicopters. Sir, those birds are getting close. We need to submerge now if we want to avoid detection. Vasquez was already descending toward the cave entrance, her movements confident and precise. Follow my light signals and don't deviate from the marked route. The caves are equipped with emergency beacons, but getting lost down there could be fatal. As SEAL Team 6 followed their mysterious savior into the underwater labyrinth, Morrison reflected on the extraordinary turn their mission had taken. They had started the day as hunters gathering intelligence on enemy capabilities, but had become the hunted in a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of their own command structure. Kim monitored his communications equipment as they descended. All hostile frequencies are going silent. They're either switching to backup channels or preparing for radio silence during their assault. Tank Patterson studied the cave entrance with his demolitions expertise. This entrance has been artificially widened and reinforced. Someone spent serious money preparing this escape route. Spider Castellanos took one last look at the surface before disappearing into the cave system. Those helicopters are beginning their search pattern. Good timing on our exit. As the darkness of the underwater caves enveloped SEAL Team 6, Morrison found himself trusting his team's lives to a woman he had met less than an hour ago. But Vasquez had already demonstrated capabilities that bordered on the impossible, and her intelligence about the conspiracy seemed both detailed and accurate. Thompson assisted Santos through the narrow cave entrance while O'Brien monitored his condition. He's holding up well, but we need to reach medical facilities soon. Vasquez's light signals guided them through twisting passages that seemed to have been carved specifically for tactical movement. The preparation required for such an elaborate escape route suggested that the threat to SEAL Team 6 had been known and planned for well in advance. Morrison swam through the alien underwater landscape while processing the implications of everything Vasquez had revealed. If she was correct about the conspiracy, it meant that every mission SEAL Team 6 had conducted for months might have been compromised. The security implications were staggering. As they moved deeper into the cave system, following the mysterious Commander Vasquez toward an uncertain destination, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that their rescue was only the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous than any of them had imagined. The underwater cave system proved to be an engineering marvel that defied everything Lieutenant Commander Morrison thought he knew about covert operations infrastructure. As SEAL Team 6 followed Commander Vasquez through the labyrinthine passages, they encountered airlocks, emergency supply stations, and navigation aids that suggested years of preparation and unlimited funding. After 25 minutes of careful navigation through the submerged tunnels, they emerged into an air-filled chamber that served as the entrance to what Vasquez had described as a safe house. Morrison was astonished to discover that the facility was actually a sophisticated underground complex carved into the coastal rock formations. "Welcome to Operation Safeguard," Vasquez announced as she led the team through a series of security doors that required both biometric scanning and encrypted key codes. This facility has been under construction for 2 years as part of a black program to protect high-value special operations personnel from insider threats. Rodriguez looked around the facility with professional admiration. The complex featured medical facilities, communications equipment, weapon storage, and living quarters that could support a full team for weeks. "Ma'am, the funding for something like this would require authorization at the highest levels." "It does," Vasquez confirmed as she led Santos to the medical facility where automated systems immediately began diagnosing his condition. Operation Safeguard was authorized directly by the Secretary of Defense after intelligence indicated that special operations teams were being specifically targeted by hostile forces with inside information. Thompson assisted O'Brien in treating Santos, while the automated medical systems provided advanced diagnostic capabilities. The facility's medical equipment was more sophisticated than anything Morrison had seen outside of major military hospitals. "The good news is that the infection is contained and responds well to the antibiotics we're administering," O'Brien reported. "He'll be fully operational within 48 hours. Kim had immediately gravitated toward the communications center, where he discovered equipment that made their standard SEAL gear look primitive by comparison. "Ma'am, this communication system can access any military frequency worldwide, and the encryption algorithms are unlike anything I've seen before. The technology is a combination of existing systems and experimental equipment developed specifically for situations like yours," Vasquez explained. "We needed communication capabilities that couldn't be compromised by conventional intelligence gathering methods." Tank Patterson was examining the weapons storage area with obvious appreciation. "These aren't standard military weapons. Where did you get experimental ammunition designed for underwater use?" Vasquez smiled for the first time since their rescue. "I've been working with advanced weapons development for 3 years. The underwater sniper system I used earlier today is my own design, based on principles that most people consider impossible." Spider Castellanos had been quietly observing Vasquez since their arrival at the facility. "Ma'am, with respect, your capabilities seem to go beyond standard special forces training. What's your actual background?" Morrison had been wondering the same thing. Vasquez's knowledge, resources, and tactical capabilities suggested training and experience that went well beyond conventional military education. "My background is complicated," Vasquez replied, activating a secure computer terminal that displayed classified information requiring the highest security clearances. "I was recruited for a program that doesn't officially exist, designed to develop counterintelligence capabilities specifically for protecting special operations personnel." The computer screen displayed organizational charts and personnel files that made Morrison's jaw drop. The conspiracy against SEAL Team 6 extended into the highest levels of military command, including people Morrison had served under and respected for years. Rodriguez studied the information with growing alarm. Ma'am, if this intelligence is accurate, the conspiracy includes at least 12 high-ranking officers with access to special operations planning and execution. 14, actually, Vasquez corrected, highlighting additional names on the display. The operation has been running for 18 months, systematically compromising Special Forces missions throughout the Middle East region. Morrison felt sick as he recognized names of officers he had trusted with his life and the lives of his men. The betrayal went beyond professional misconduct into the realm of treason that could compromise national security for decades. Kim looked up from his analysis of communication intercepts. Ma'am, why target SEAL Team 6 specifically? There are other special operations units with similar capabilities. Because SEAL Team 6 represents the pinnacle of special operations capability, Vasquez explained. Capturing an entire team would provide intelligence on training methods, operational procedures, and classified technology that would be invaluable to hostile nations. Tank Patterson had been studying the tactical displays showing the search patterns of hostile forces above them. How long do we have before they locate this facility? The facility is designed to be undetectable by conventional search methods, Vasquez assured him. But we can't stay here indefinitely. We need to move to the next phase of the operation. Thompson looked up from monitoring Santos's condition. Ma'am, what exactly is the next phase? We can't just hide here while traitors continue operating at the highest levels of command. Vasquez activated another computer terminal that displayed real-time intelligence on the conspiracy members. The next phase involves exposing the entire network and ensuring that everyone involved faces appropriate consequences. Morrison studied the intelligence data while processing the implications. Ma'am, taking down officers at this level requires evidence that will stand up in military court proceedings. We need more than intelligence reports. I've been gathering that evidence for months, Vasquez replied, displaying recordings and documents that documented the conspiracy in detail. Tonight's operation was the final piece needed to build a case that will result in convictions. Spider Castellanos had been monitoring external security systems. Ma'am, the hostile search teams have moved past our location without detecting the facility. How is that possible? The facility incorporates stealth technology adapted from submarine design, Vasquez explained. We're effectively invisible to sonar, thermal imaging, and electromagnetic detection methods. O'Brien completed his treatment of Santos and joined the team briefing. So we're safe here, but what about the larger implications? If this conspiracy has been running for 18 months, how many other operations have been compromised? Vasquez's expression darkened as she displayed a map showing compromised operations throughout the region. 47 special operations missions have been affected, resulting in unnecessary casualties and mission failures that have weakened our strategic position. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. Morrison realized that men had died because trusted officers had been feeding information to hostile forces. The weight of that knowledge settled on his shoulders like a physical burden. Rodriguez had been studying the personnel files of the conspiracy members. Ma'am, how do we proceed with exposing this network without alerting them to our survival? That's where tonight's operation becomes crucial, Vasquez replied. The fact that you survived the ambush will force the conspiracy into emergency protocols. They'll have to communicate with their handlers, and when they do, we'll be listening. Kim's expertise in communications intelligence made him particularly interested in this aspect of the operation. You're using us as bait to force them into exposing themselves. Exactly, Vasquez confirmed. Your survival represents a threat that will require immediate damage control. The conspiracy members will have to contact their foreign handlers to coordinate a response, and those communications will provide the final evidence needed for prosecution. Morrison appreciated the tactical elegance of the plan, but he was concerned about the risks involved. Ma'am, using us as bait puts my team in continued danger. What kind of protection can you provide? The entire facility is monitored by advanced security systems, Vasquez assured him. Additionally, I have backup assets positioned throughout the region who can respond immediately to any threat. Tank Patterson looked skeptical about the scope of resources Vasquez claimed to have available. Ma'am, the kind of operation you're describing would require massive funding and personnel. How is it possible to hide something this large from oversight? Vasquez smiled grimly. Because the people providing oversight are the same ones being investigated. Operation Safeguard was designed to operate completely outside normal command structures. Santos had recovered enough to participate in the briefing despite his injury. "Ma'am, what happens to us after this operation is complete? Our security clearances and operational effectiveness will be compromised. Actually, your experience tonight qualifies you for assignment to Operation Safeguard itself," Vasquez replied. "We need personnel with your expertise and proven loyalty to help protect other special operations teams." Morrison felt the weight of decision settling on him. The offer represented an opportunity to strike back against the forces that had betrayed them, but it also meant abandoning the traditional career path that had defined his life. Thompson had been monitoring news feeds on the facility's computer systems. "The attack on our team hasn't appeared in any official channels yet. How long before our survival becomes public knowledge? The conspiracy members will try to keep your survival secret as long as possible," Vasquez predicted. "But eventually, the truth will come out, and when it does, they'll be desperate to silence you permanently." Rodriguez checked his watch and realized they had been underground for over 3 hours. "Ma'am, our chain of command will expect a mission report. How do we handle communication with potentially compromised personnel?" "We don't," Vasquez replied firmly. "From this point forward, all communication goes through Operation Safeguard channels. Your official chain of command cannot be trusted." The implications of operating outside normal military command structures troubled Morrison despite his appreciation for the necessity. Years of training had emphasized the importance of following proper channels and respecting the chain of command. Kim suddenly looked up from his monitoring station with alarm. "Ma'am, I'm detecting encrypted communications on frequencies associated with the conspiracy members. They're definitely coordinating some kind of response." Vasquez moved quickly to the communications center and began analyzing the intercepted transmissions. "Perfect. They're panicking and making exactly the kind of mistakes we need to complete our evidence file." Spider Castellanos continued monitoring external security while the communications analysis proceeded. "How long before this evidence can be presented to appropriate authorities?" 72 hours, Vasquez replied confidently. "We have enough evidence now to begin arrests, but I want to make sure we capture the entire network before anyone escapes." Morrison looked around at his team and realized they were no longer just Navy SEALs carrying out a routine mission. They had become key witnesses and participants in an operation that would reshape special operations security for years to come. Tank Patterson voiced what everyone was thinking. "Ma'am, assuming we survive the next 72 hours and help expose this conspiracy, what guarantees do we have that similar networks won't develop in the future?" Vasquez's expression became determined as she outlined the long-term implications of their mission. Operation Safeguard represents a permanent change in how we protect special operations personnel. The days of blindly trusting traditional command structures are over. As SEAL Team 6 prepared for the next phase of their unexpected mission, Morrison reflected on how dramatically their lives had changed in a single night. They had started as hunters pursuing intelligence on enemy capabilities, become the hunted in an elaborate trap, and were now key players in exposing a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of military command. The mysterious Commander Vasquez had saved their lives and revealed a world of covert operations that existed beyond anything they had imagined. Now they faced a choice between returning to their old lives and joining a new kind of warfare designed to protect those who served their country from enemies within their own ranks. The water that had nearly become their grave had instead delivered them to a new destiny, one that would require all their training, courage, and brotherhood to navigate successfully. The mission was far from over, but for the first time since the ambush began, Morrison felt confident that they were fighting on the right side of a war they were finally beginning to understand.